Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. It's Cody, Gotham's Caped Crusader, and we're keeping it geekly. Yes, this is your number one stop for all things geek culture, from comic books to video games and so much more. And man, am I excited to be back after completely redoing my OBS. There was some things messing up here and there, so I went ahead and just took a couple of days off, reset the whole process, and came up with some new features that I was pretty excited about. So without further hesitation, let's go ahead and dive into the geek culture world and see what's been buzzing, and then we're going to be moving on to those DC comics. Now, the very first thing we're going to be covering, of course, is going to be one of the more hotter things off the press, and that's going to be Sony executive fired after some rather disturbing things came up in the news. Yes, it looks like a senior vice president at Sony Interactive Entertainment has been terminated from employment after some serious allegations have started floating online. Now, this is one of those more touchier areas on the YouTube site, so I'm going to be sure to use a little bit different wording here. But it looks like George Cachopo was a senior vice president at Sony Interactive Entertainment who's been working in engineering on the PlayStation Store since 2013. He's been terminated from his position because there was a certain operation sting involving older adults going after those that are younger, and he was caught in 4K. People vs. Preds claims they had a conversation with the man they allege is George, who was using the alias Jeff on a dating site Grindr. They claim to be 15 years old, at which point George still invited them to his home for sex. Now, keeping this just short and sweet and to the point and going a little verbatim off the Kotaku article, it looks like People vs. Preds, a vigilante group, impersonated a 15-year-old boy who made contact with George online, and then he invited them to his home for sex. Now, while on the video, it doesn't show any crimes being committed, but People vs. Preds have posted a number of screenshots. They say they detailed the arrangements for the encounter, which include a alleged selfie of George wearing the same shirt. And keep in mind, it is a PlayStation 5 shirt. Now, while no criminal charges have been filed as of yet, I think Sony made the right move here, cutting the trash from their ranks. And even though we can't get any sort of criminal charge for this filth, I think making it publicly known what they were trying to do is going to do some damage in itself. Now, on to our next piece of news. It looks like Pokemon Journeys just introduced a multiverse for Pokemon, and we're going to see Ash meet Ash. Now, in the latest season of Pokemon, we see Ash Ketchum and his friend Go adding more powerful Pokemon to their rosters, and the trainers have been running into strange new problems via the multiverse arriving into the Sinnoh region. Now, in episode 89, we see Dialga and Palkia just getting this huge confrontation, and thanks to Dialga's extraordinary abilities, it begins opening up all these multiverses across the Sinnoh region. Now, with the multiverse hitting Pokemon, I am seeing some complaints that Ash should have met Red instead. Let me know your thoughts down below if you think Ash meeting Ash was cool or if Red would have been a missed opportunity. Now, on to our last piece of news, and it is a little bit of a grim one. It looks like Nintendo engineer Masayuki Uemura died at the age of 78. Now, my sincerest apologies if I'm mispronouncing any of that in any way, but it looks like Masayuki, a former engineer at Nintendo, passed away on December 6th. He joined the console giant back in 1972, and he was the lead architect on the NES and the SNES consoles during the respective development during the 1980s. It's worth noting that he's also worked on Nintendo's early light gun games back in the 1970s before leading the company's color TV console line from 1977. He also served as the general manager of Nintendo's research and development division until 2004. I always believe it's important to shine a little spotlight on these creators when they pass, because without their influence, who knows where Nintendo would be, or even the gaming industry. Now, that being said, guys, that does wrap up This Week in Geek, but stay tuned. We got those fresh polls coming right out the oven. We're going to be starting fresh with DC Horror Presents Soul Plumber issue number 3, created by the host of the last podcast on the left. Now, with Friends Like These, part 3 begins with Edgar contemplating if he made the right choice while Elk is stirring Scuzz's dead body in an acid bath. While Elk and his W amputee war buddy Scorpion reminisce on their war days, Edgar is really beginning to doubt this hand of God that he led him here. He quickly realizes he's late for work and he has to go relieve Patty from the come and go. Now, Patty, on the other hand, is getting questioned by a suspicious looking man in armor who's looking for Edgar Wiggins. When Edgar arrives, Patty pulls him aside to let him know that this man with a sword is looking for him, and while she's berating him, Father Revere sees Edgar and he is prepared to deal judgment. As Edgar begins to plead for his life against Father Revere, we see Patty hold him off with a shotgun. Blorb, on the other hand, is looking for his friend, and he's making his way to the come and go via a bus. And while Father Revere has Edgar at gunpoint, things are about to get explosive as Blorb is heading straight for them. Now, Soul Plumber definitely takes me for a turn every time I read it because I have no idea what to expect, and it is getting better book by book. That being said, we're going to be moving on to our next issue of the week, Suicide Squad issue number 10, written by Robbie Thompson, with art being done by Eduardo Pansica, Julio Ferreira, and Dexter Soy. Now, we begin this issue with Culebra having a flashback about being bitten by a snake when she was younger and almost dying. But due to her mother's agreement with Spiral, they were able to rescue her as long as they could experiment on her, and thus have her do their criminal bidding, which eventually landed her in the Suicide Squad. We then pivot to Match, Major Force, and the rest of the Suicide Squad floating in the ruins of their ship before the Thanagarians descend on them. Major Force, of course, is more than happy to kill them as payback, but Match wants to resume the mission. Suddenly, comms are cut, and they are left with no option but to survive at any cost, and it's all-out war until they are eaten up by a monstrous giant space alien. Now, while they prepare for death, Green Lantern, Sojourner, Mullen has other plans for them, which involves taking them all to prison, which Waller may have already planned for. Now, on to our last book of the week. It's going to be Batman 118, written by Joshua Williamson, with art being done by Jorge Molina and Michael Janin. The Abyss Part 1 begins with Gotham celebrating that the Magistrate is gone and Scarecrow is locked up in the new Arkham Tower. We see two low-time crooks attempting to break into a pawn shop until they see Batman lurking in the shadows, and then they just throw their hands up and run to a police car screaming, "Arrest us, we are about to break into this pawn shop." Something is off and Batman is able to sense it as a group of villains are heading to the Billionaire's Ball, and it just so happens to be themed as the villains of Gotham. Now, fortunately, Batman is able to tell the signs of who's there to party and who's there to terrorize, and things get heated as the fun is about to begin. Firefly, the Joker, the Riddler, and Two-Face start holding partygoers hostage, demanding for access to their bank accounts as we see the Killer Croc jump out of the crowd and start assaulting them, quickly discovering that that is Batman in disguise. This is going to be the least of Batman's worries, though, as we later discover that Batman Inc. has been arrested for murder. Now, I always love me a good twist in a Batman story, and this issue was just filled with them. With that being said, that does wrap up our fresh polls for the week. You can always catch me on my respective social media platforms at Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and so much more at JobForCody. And if you liked today's video, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for any time that I drop more content. With that being said, guys, keep it geekly.